This definitely seems like a niche video. Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Welcome to my video in which I tell you what I think are the best books about World War I. Now this is of course a list specific to me, and you can take it for whatever you want, and I'm sure many of you have read books that you think are better than the books that are on my list, but it's my list. So here are 11 books that I think are good that are about World War I, in case you're interested in that topic. I have both nonfiction and fiction books here. I have books written by historians. I have books written by poets and novelists. I have books written by people who participated in World War I and books written by people who were way too young to have participated in World War I and are still alive. So I thought I'd start off today by looking at my favorite World War I books by just picking a single kind of one volume World War I history that I like the best. I've read several of these, and the one I like the best is The First World War by John Keegan. Keegan is a well-known military historian, and I've read a couple of books by him. I find his writing style to be clear, lucid, has a good command of, I think, the information, and he presents it really clearly. So, if you're just looking to me for a really good primer on World War I that is easy to read and is probably not going to give you any kind of unexpected information, I think Keegan's is a good place to start. Much different than that is what really is my absolute favorite book about World War I, and that's The Beauty and the Sorrow, An Intimate History of the First World War by Peter Englund. You may know that this book pops up all the time on lists of my top 10 books or my favorite books, and I just think this is remarkable. And what makes this book remarkable is the way in which it's organized and written, and what Englund researched. And how he presents the story of World War I. First of all, it's broken down by the years of the war, 1914 through the end of the war. But more importantly, Englund follows through their letters and writings and diary entries. He follows several people who were involved in World War I or affected by World War I from all kinds of places. So in the inside, there's a dramatis personae page where you can find that some of the people he follows are, an Italian infantry soldier who served in Alpine Unit, a New Zealand artilleryman, German high seas fleet seaman, German schoolgirl, an American wife of a Polish aristocrat, a Venezuelan cavalryman, British Army infantryman, a French civil servant, American field surgeon. There are several women here who are represented, and it really, I think, gives a fairly complete, and as it kind of indicates here on the cover, an intimate history of World War I as it affected these people. I think it's just remarkable. If your thing about World War I is just kind of the almost gross out, colossal waste of human life and literally looking at the brutal conditions under which World War I soldiers fought, I would recommend Eye Deep in Hell, Trench Warfare, World War I by John Ellis. It's published by Johns Hopkins University Press many years ago, and it really kind of takes you through all the aspects of life in the trenches and how horrible it was. It contains lots of photographs and pictures and graphics, and I just thought it was really good, really kind of disturbing and grim, but really good. And then another book about World War I mentioned here all the time, and that is The Great War in Modern Memory by Paul Fussell. This book really looks at how World War I impacted the culture of the West through poetry, through literature, through movies, through other ways in which images and ideas about the war impacted American society impacted world society or Western society, not just American society. Matter of fact, it focuses on mostly non-American society. And I think as an American, this book really kind of gives you a good look at why World War I is still so important, why it was important when it happened, how it shaped Europe and European attitudes that led into World War II. In America and the United States, we have a tendency to focus more on World War II than World War I, and this shows, I think, exactly all the ways in which World War I impacted culture and modern society in the West. So those were all nonfiction books, yes. The fifth nonfiction book on my list is Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. Robert Graves, poet, frontline officer in a British military unit during World War I, good friends with other World War I poets, who wrote essentially a memoir of his experiences in World War I. I believe this was published in around 1929, and so to me it's a really good kind of first-hand account written as a memoir instead of as a work of fiction, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. Graves goes on and writes the Claudius novels and tons of other poems, tons of poems and other things. And then we get down to where I really probably went overboard here, and that is in looking at World War I fiction. Now, one of the things that is kind of one of my things as a history person is to kind of look at how much World War I fiction, how many actual facts, how much reality World War I fiction actually had in it. You know, how much of the real experience were you getting insight into if you read one of these novels? Well, the thing about World War I is that a lot of writers from, you know, all the countries involved wrote about their experiences in World War I. So the book I think is most well known in the United States is All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Remarque, and I believe this is probably the best World War I novel. All things considered, it is told from the point of view of German soldiers and the struggles they went through and the nightmares they experienced in terms of World War I. In terms of a novel by a French author who experienced World War I and wrote about it, Henri Barbusse's novel, The Story of the Squad, I believe that's the name of it. No, it was called Under Fire. That's it. The Story of the Squad, which I read as an ebook, or actually I listened to as an audiobook, is really, really powerful and honest and grim, and you know, it comes really close to kind of the nonfiction kind of feel of Eye Deep in Hell, telling the story of French soldiers involved in the squad, the grinding nature of war, the disgust, the death, the discomfort, the lack of ability to relate to people who weren't involved in the war, about the war. It's a really excellent novel. So that I have a German, I have a Frenchman, I'm going to also have a Canadian, and that is the novel Pass of Glory by Humphry Cobb. Cobb served in World War I as a member of the Canadian military and fought on the front lines. And this is his novel about essentially the injustice, I think, of war. There's a great, by the way, Stanley Kubrick movie starring Kirk Douglas about this, and it doesn't follow the book exactly, but it gives you kind of the idea. In this case, a group of French soldiers mutiny, and the decisions made to execute all of them. And this book is kind of about the story about how that works out. And I found it to be really good and gripping. And then I think the best American World War I novel about World War I is Through the Wheat by Thomas Boyd, who you may know is an author who I've researched and written about. This book was written in 1923. It's one of the really early novels written by somebody who had first-hand experience. It, you know, by comparison, Remarque doesn't write All Quiet on the Western Front until the 30s. I believe Barbusse beat Boyd. I think Under Fire, The Story of a Squad was published in 1921, somewhere around there. But this is 1923 story of an American Marine who fought in World War I. You know, no reason why most people would know this history, but 2 Marine regiments went to France and fought in World War I for much longer than most of the rest of the United States military did, and they had similar experiences with the kind of waste, ridiculousness, randomness of war. And Thomas Boyd was in one of those Marine units, and he wrote about it, and this is an excellent novel of World War I. And then we get to modern writers who did not experience World War I, and nobody should be surprised that the Regeneration Trilogy is here. Regeneration, The Eye in the Door, and The Ghost Road, which basically focuses on Siegfried Sassoon and other members of the kind of the poet writing or the poets of World War I, and particularly it focuses on a doctor and his work in dealing with what today we'd call PTSD, and it kind of really, I think, explores the humanity, the damage, the kind of strange attraction that the war oftentimes exerted over men who were involved in it, at the same time that it repelled them, ideas that are long gone, probably for the best, about honor and doing one's duty even in the worst possible circumstances. I think all 3 of the books are great. And then last, one of my favorite books from a few years ago, and that is At Night, All Blood is Black. This is, again, a novel written by a living novelist who had no experience with World War I, which focuses on the experience of a Senegalese soldier who is fighting for the French military as part of a Senegalese unit, and the brutality of war and what it does to a person psychologically, emotionally, mentally. Just a truly, truly great book, and really short, so if you're looking for a shorty September, this would definitely qualify. I think it's less than 180 pages. Yep, it's right around 150 pages. So there you go. There is my list of the best books about World War I. Really look forward to any suggestions you have, or your ideas about the best books of World War I are. You can leave those down in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.